Gold Squad TV. So I'm about to make a really controversial video. It's going to be so controversial, I'm going to have to block comments because I'm not trying to have a billion comments on my video. Um, but this video is about sports racism and sports undertones. So I'm speaking from a fan's perspective. I'm a Latino with African descent. So I'm not gonna act like I'm not dumb to this. I'm brown skinned. You know what I mean? And I feel offended whenever I hear the stereotypes of certain sports undertones being thrown at me whenever I have to have a conversation with some of my white, let's say friends, but like more like associates. And a lot of this comes through cooler talk. So if you know about cooler talk, you know how this goes. Now, a lot of the elder, this is really more a video, more about the elders that are happen to be white that I know. Well, I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but they know who they are. And the undertones that I feel that get kind of thrown around. So before I even get into this, these are such undertones that are kind of borderline racist to me that I kind of feel like they're weird. Act like you've been there before. One. So you can't celebrate in the end zone. You can't show off because it offends you. Same thing goes in baseball too, for the record. Baseball has a connotation that I'm not really feeling either. You can't celebrate in that sport without somebody doing a 95-mile-per-hour fastball at your dome, and they wonder why the ratings are down. The ratings are down for a reason. All right, so we're going to talk about Mac Jones getting picked by the Patriots, right? So Mac Jones gets picked by the Patriots. I already made a video on how I felt I wanted Justin Fields, right? So I go up to one of my associates, and he comes and talks to me how we got our quarterback that we wanted. I don't ever remember anybody saying they wanted Mac Jones as a Patriots fan, but whatever. Even team, whatever. I've never heard anyone in the team utter those words. So I basically tell him I wasn't really feeling the pick. And he looked befuddled, like why I didn't like the pick. Why come you don't like him? And I made my technical points on him about how he doesn't manipulate the pocket. He can't run. He told me that Brady can't run. I'm not saying Brady could run, but Brady knew how to manipulate the pocket. That said, he looked befuddled. Like, and mind you, Mac Jones has not proven anything for the record yet. He hasn't played a down in the league. And he starts looking at me befuddled. But why don't you like Mac Jones? I'm like, kind of told him, like, listen, it's not personal. I'm just talking about the player. I'm not talking about the human. Well, I was just like, yo, this dude has bust written all over him. That's just how I felt. Now, if he proves me wrong, that's different. But when he went out, this dude kind of started having these little connotations that I wasn't really feeling. Like, well, he's better than Cam Newton. I never liked Cam Newton anyway. I don't like Cam Newton. I just don't like him. And I'm asking him, like, why don't you like Cam Newton? And he starts giving me all these undertones that I'm kind of like, wow, like, I don't know, it's just something about him. And it's like, whenever I hear it's just something about him, and as a white gentleman, I cringe. I cringe. Because now, I also mentioned Justin Fields and how I wanted Justin Fields. And he talked about how he dropped down on, he was real quick to feel he dropped down on the board. I don't think he's going to be really that good. And I was just like, you don't know that. How many quarterbacks drop down in the draft and end up being great? Aaron Rodgers being one of them. You don't know that. You don't know if Justin Fields is going to be. He's won every level he's ever been on. Give the man a shot. Chicago, you got yourselves a good quarterback. That's it. We kept talking, and the more and more I just started feeling, this ain't the first time I had a conversation with this gentleman, and I felt a little uncomfortable with the undertones. And mind you, he's in his 60s, so it's like you're gonna get a lot of this. So fast forward to another gentleman who happens to always come around the spot. He's He's a baseball and football fan. I'm a basketball head. Anybody knows me, I love basketball. I grew up playing it. I grew up in the hood playing it. It just, that fadeaway jumper was something that Michael used to shoot, was something I used to emulate, and I would spend hours and hours and hours emulating the footwork and the separation you could get off the fadeaway. So he starts talking to me about sports. He's a Patriots fan, like I'm a Patriots fan. But here's where the divide comes. I was like, he asked me if I was going to be watching the draft. And I was like, yeah, I'll be watching the draft, but I'll also be watching the Celtics game. And he goes on, oh, you like basketball? Like, I don't like basketball. Like, and it's like the undertone I felt was uncomfortable. Just the way, and I asked him, how come you don't like basketball? I don't know, I just don't like them. And it's like, if you know anything about basketball, it's predominantly African American. So it made me feel some type of way. This same gentleman said the same thing way before all the social injustice situation went down. So about 2-3 years ago, before all this crazy stuff started going down with George Floyd and the cop killing George Floyd. You know what I mean? Mind you, that cop's gonna rot in prison, but nevertheless, the job isn't done. Anyway, I found it really weird how he was like, he's a baseball fan, but he's a football fan, but he hates basketball. So I went up to my man, Zakeem, my homie, and we were talking about it. He's like, yeah, he's been approached like this too, about how it always seems like there's a white person, usually the older generations. I'm not blaming all white folks, but just the older generation who seems to really dislike the idea of a league being predominantly African American athletes. You start hearing some of the undertones too, like some people start talking slave talk and start saying really insensitive things about how somebody was built faster, stronger by design, and all this nonsense, BS bullshit that I don't really be feeling, especially being a minority. Sometimes people need to read the room. You go up to a brown skinned Puerto Rock with African roots, and you're gonna go and talk to me about racist shit like I'm supposed to be down with it. I'm like, you got the wrong Puerto Rock, bro. You got the wrong Puerto. I don't rock with that. So I am not down with that. Especially being a Puerto Rock who's been racially profiled in the past multiple times, even had a gun put to my head by a cop. Not cool. Anyway, long story short, I don't like to use the race card on certain things, but it's weird and it's a disturbing trend. It's like when Bill Polian said Lamar Jackson should be a tight end or a running back. It's like, this was like in 2018 when he was getting drafted. I've never liked Polian, for the record. But when Polian said that, I was just like, yo, that's some weird shit. Why would you say that in an era where running quarterbacks are actually the thing right now? Especially Pat Mahomes is a guy that could run out the pocket and throw touchdowns. Could never understand that. We're still doing this in 2021, man. Like, it's just a lot of connotations or undertones that I think is really uncomfortable, and it needs to stop. You can't sit there and criticize Cam Newton because Cam Newton celebrates and scores touchdowns and does these extra celebrations. You're going to sit there and tell him to act like you've been there, but you down with a cop. You down with Brett Favre talking about he doesn't think the cop really meant to kill George Floyd and co-sign that. It's complete bullshit. And I'm making this known because I just feel like as a sports fan, if some of you fools that you gonna just come around me with your little undertones and think that that's cool, I'm telling you right now, you full of shit. I take all this shit to note on my dome. That's why I'm not lighting y'all up by name, and I should put names out, but I'm not gonna do it. But y'all need to stop. I don't care if it's 60, 40, or 12. If you're a white gentleman or a white, female, it's not cool for you to say undertonish things about things you don't understand. Because even if you're not a racist person, you still come off as being racist in certain moments. And I'm not a sensitive dude, but like there are some things I'm just not comfortable with. Like whatever your issues or opinions on about kneeling or The basketball players kneeling and putting the Black Lives Matter stuff on there. That's y'all opinion. But don't come around me with that nonsense. Because to me, I'm all for like equality for everybody. I don't care if you black, white, German, Chinese, Asian, gay, straight, LGBTQ, trans, whatever. We not for the ignorance here. We not for the ignorance here. I am not for the ignorance. I don't deal with undertones. I don't like that. You have an opinion. Sometimes you just need to learn to let that go, or just keep it to yourself. Because to me, try not trying to be racist. You look racist, and that's not cool. It's not cool. You know, the NBA is predominantly African American. I watch basketball. I grew up playing it in my hood. You know, sit there and try to tell me that you don't like basketball. It's one thing to say if you don't like basketball, you just don't like basketball. Then I understand. Maybe you just don't understand it as a sport. Maybe you just never played it. I totally get it. But when you start saying that, I don't know, I just don't like it, now I start looking at you some type of way. Not all, not minorities, because there's some people that are minorities that don't like the sport. I totally get it. And I know there's white folks that don't like the sport. And I totally get it if it's a legit reason. But don't undertone me to death about why you don't like it. You know, be prepared. If you're going to say what you're going to say it to my face. And tell me why you don't like it. I'll respect you more. But don't undertone me to death. Now, as for Mac Jones, and how this equates to Mac Jones is simple. I don't think Mac Jones is the answer. I don't think Mac Jones is a bad person. I'm pretty sure he's a good guy. But you're talking about replacing the greatest quarterback of all time who just won a Super Bowl in a different organization with a guy that had weapons in Alabama. But if you know anything about Alabama quarterbacks, they've never proven anything outside of Joe Namath. And even Namath's stats weren't all that great. He just won that Super Bowl. Now, I don't really trust Bill with offense. I trust him with defense. I never really ever trusted Bill with offense. So let's see what happens. I hope if the kid proved me wrong, can prove me wrong. But don't sit there and try to tell me that Justin Fields slipped down a draft and start making all these connotations and these weird statements to me, like subliminal shots. Believe me, I was a former rapper. I know when I'm hearing a subliminal. But anyway, this is just a piece of my mind that I'm giving. Some people ain't gonna like this video. I probably wouldn't be surprised if I get a lot of dislikes for this video. But it needs to be said. The undertones of why you don't like a certain sport or don't like a certain player of color has to stop. And it's not cool. Gold Squad TV. Peace out.